The 10,046th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Israel to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S 2025/748, the text of a draft resolution submitted by the United States of America. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote of the draft resolution before it. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, for 2 agonizing years, Gaza, home to over 2 million souls, has been a crucible of conflict, a hell on earth, where Hamas's brutality and terror met Israel's fierce response, leaving rubble where schools once stood and graves where playgrounds thrived. The death toll climbs into the tens of thousands. Hunger gnaws at the vulnerable, and hope flickers like a candle in the storm. But colleagues, here today, November 17th, we stand at a crossroads. Today, we have the power to douse the flames and light a path to peace. That path is the draft United Nations Security Council resolution before us, a bold, pragmatic blueprint born from President Trump's 20-point comprehensive plan. End the Gaza conflict, the living hostages released. There are more still absolutely to go, with families suffering, but we have a ceasefire that is holding. Their plan has already silenced the guns and freed 45 hostages in this fragile, fragile first step. And let me be clear.
Mr. President, Guyana voted for the resolution just considered, as beyond preserving the ceasefire, building on the ceasefire deal is also critical. Guyana acknowledges that the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict seeks to go beyond the cessation of hostilities and to chart a clear path for the recovery and reconstruction of Gaza. In this regard, Guyana stresses that efforts to this end must be rooted in the two-state solution, which must remain the centerpiece of all peace efforts in Palestine. The continuing occupation of the Palestinian territory is a violation of international law, bolstered by the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice of July 2024, which confirmed this and said that the occupation must be brought to an end. The Security Council, therefore, must ensure the tenets of international law are upheld. Mr. President, throughout the negotiation of the text, clarity regarding the role of the Palestinian Authority in the recovery and reconstruction of Gaza was important to my delegation. Guyana is of the firm view that the PA must have an integral role in these processes, and that role should not be subject to preconditions that are not measurable. We believe that this is also linked to retaining the centrality of the two-state solution as the only just, viable, and comprehensive solution to the Palestinian question. Operating from this premise will ensure that Palestinians exercise their right to self-determination. Further, the central role of the United Nations in the recovery and reconstruction process must be safeguarded. Mr. President, Guyana anticipates that with the adoption of this resolution, the implementation phase will prioritize identifying and building on the synergies between the comprehensive plan and other relevant
United Nations, humanitarian assistance, as well as the role of the Palestinian Authority in the governance arrangement toward the single, unified Palestinian state. A just and lasting peace can only be achieved by recognizing and upholding the two-state solution, which remains the foundation for a comprehensive resolution to the conflict. We are convinced these are central to any credible and sustainable solution. We reaffirm our solidarity with the Palestinian people and reiterate our steadfast support for the realization of an independent and a sovereign state of Palestine with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital in accordance with international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. Our delegation stands ready to work with the international community to ensure that this opportunity is not lost and that peace in the occupied Palestinian territory and the wider region becomes not just a possibility.
Presented by the United States and supported by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Jordan, Pakistan, and Turkey, because even recognizing the urgent need to comprehensively address the political and security causes that have prevented a sustainable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for decades, we place at the heart of our position the Israeli and Palestinian populations and the scale of the suffering and devastation that they are facing today. The war over the last 2 years triggered following the devastating attacks perpetrated by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023, which Panama has repeatedly condemned, led to the tragic reality that
relieve the humanitarian disaster and launch post-war reconstruction to rekindle the hope of peace and development for people in Gaza. But regrettably, the draft resolution that was just voted on is lacking in many respects and is deeply worrisome. First, the draft resolution is vague and unclear on many critical elements. The penholder requests the Council to authorize the establishment of a Board of Peace and International Stabilization Force, which will play a key role in the post-war governance in Gaza. It should have explained in detail their structure, composition, terms of reference, and criteria of preparation, among others. This should have been an essential basis for Council's serious discussions. However, the draft resolution contains skimpy details on these and serious differences among members. The penholder forced the Council to take action on the draft